Hi, everyone. This is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. It is Friday, March 6th, and today we are going to talk about the Sun's upcoming conjunction to the planet Neptune. Now, this conjunction is forming over the next couple of days as as the full moon is also coming through in the sign of Virgo. So that's what we're going to take a look at today. We'll do a separate video for the full moon in Virgo over the weekend. Today, we're just going to take a look specifically at the Sun-Neptune conjunction. Now, we've been looking at planetary combinations the past couple of days. We've taken a look at Venus-Uranus. We've taken a look at Venus and Saturn. It's interesting that we have a full moon happening as so many aspects are occurring on this first half of the moon cycle, and that we have some other big aspects perfecting right as the full moon is happening, which means the full moon is literally engaging with both Neptune and the Sun. Always going to engage with the Sun by an opposition at the time of the full moon, but now you've got Neptune in the mix and Venus and Uranus in the mix. So a lot of themes that are appearing simultaneously right now. And so if you haven't listened to the other videos that I've done this past week, especially Venus-Uranus yesterday, you might want to check that out just to see what's going on with that as well. Now, let me give you a look at what this transit looks like. So as always, it's nice to just get a little visual of it. So you're going to see the Sun and Neptune coming together. Remember, ancient astrologers looked within about a 3-degree range. Here it is right now. In fact, where I'm at right now, the Sun is basically at the midheaven right now. It's the sort of high noon marker, and it's conjoined with Neptune. Of course, Neptune's invisible to the naked eye, even when we're looking, we have to look through a telescope basically to see Neptune. But the Sun, you can see, is at 16 degrees. Neptune is at 18 degrees. The two are coming together over the next couple of days. I'll show you what that looks like. So you're going to see 17 tomorrow on Saturday. And then Sunday, we're going to get into the 20-degree range, or the 18-degree range right here. So perfects on Sunday. Basically, then on Monday, we have the full moon. So happening back to back. All right, so what can you expect from this transit, what to watch for? As always, I have a list of different archetypal themes and qualities that you may notice in your own life, in the lives of the people around you, in your environments, in the collective, on the news. If you want to plug this into your birth chart, you look at the whole sign house of Pisces for this one and plug all of the themes I'm about to mention into the topical areas denoted by the house, whole sign house in your birth chart. So, all right, so with the Sun-Neptune, one of the things that can come through just in terms of moods and atmospheres, Neptune is a very atmospheric planet, which means that it has this very subtle but pervasive quality that you can often notice in the environments around you. You might notice, for example, a sort of peaceful or tranquil, but also bright. So for example, if you think about listening to ambient music late at night, that's sort of almost like a moon-Neptune vibe. If you think about the Sun-Neptune, it's a bit more like the tranquility of sitting in a peaceful, meadow at midday. There's a gentle breeze, it's the perfect temperature. Maybe you're having a picnic with some friends or something like that, or you're at the beach and you're sitting there just getting some sun. It's not too hot. It's not sweltering. The beach isn't packed. It's gentle. It's tranquil. It's heavenly. That kind of vibe, you may feel it in different ways in different areas. It could be at night. It doesn't necessarily have to be a day, but the feeling is a little bit more sunny. So it has more of that solar radiant quality to it. So peaceful and sort of bright. You can also think about the Neptunian quality with the Sun, that sort of peaceful, tranquil, but also otherworldly quality of Neptune when paired with the Sun can create imaginative, artistic, romantic, or spiritual moods or inspiration. So you can watch for that. It's not uncommon because the Sun has so much to do with the quality of ambition and action, meaning that we want to take action in life. The Sun denotes the kind of actions we're going to take as though our life were a plot line in a movie, like a narrative arc. If you ever studied those narrative structures in like a writing class, narrative arc is something that all writers will use and develop. They're common. It's a common part of how stories are structured. So the Sun is like a narrative arc because literally it arcs through the sky. It rises, it goes up, and it curves over and goes down. And so our lives take on stories like that, plot lines like that, that are fueled by different kinds of desires and intentions and actions that we take, all of which the Sun has long had a relationship with. The Sun is connected to life, breath, and motion, the generative motion of the cosmos, the sun is actually associated with too in ancient astrology, which means it's that which propels us. Well, when the sun hits Neptune, that which propels us may be something more, visionary, inspirational, mystical, magical, romantic, and imaginative, or even artistic. So you can think about purpose, ambition, and vision being sort of enhanced right now. Um, isn't it funny how we find ourselves in that environment that I described earlier on the beach, somewhere that's really heavenly and peaceful? And it's right at that time we're feeling so good that we go, you know what? I should probably, I have this big project at home that I should do. I've been meaning to do it. And because you're feeling so good, it's like you feel like, it's like the normally the task would feel like Lucifer. You just feel like, no, like stay away. I will not do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, it's like, And then all of a sudden you're in this night, you know what? I will clean out the garage, or whatever the case might be. I will purge my closet, whatever. So receiving the inspiration to do something that maybe we finally feel like we have the heart to do. That's a Neptune Sun feature, is feeling like we have more heart available, more emotional inspiration available to do something that might be difficult. In this sense, you have to be careful of becoming a martyr, because Neptune and the sun can also inspire people to, kind of dive off the deep end of self-sacrifice and possibly lose yourself a little bit. You can also notice when Neptune and the sun are coming together that there is often a sense of being able to perceive the divine meaning in all things. For example, I've had ladybugs, a couple of ladybugs in my office lately. And, it's like I put out a message yesterday asking for, some insight from on Facebook. I said, what do ladybugs mean? I've got a few ladybugs in my office, and it's getting warm here, of course. So they're starting to come out. But then, I had people being like, oh, well, it could be a Japanese face-eating, deranged, mess your life up bug. Be careful. You know what I mean? And it's like, like normally, like, first of all, because I'm, I do divination for a living, I'm in the habit and practice of looking for meaning in dreams and animals and nature, and have the planets and the I Ching and, tarot. It's always been fascinating to me. But I'm hesitant to put things out there, to say, hey, what is, to ask people publicly, or to talk about omens or visions or something publicly, because you always get someone like that. You're always like, oh, I saw a white horse. And they're like, yeah, that means your grandpa's going to smash, your grandpa's going to smash his car. And, the family legacy will be ruined because of a lawsuit, or, someone will always say something terrible. So I've just noticed over time that you got to be careful not to put, your dreams, visions, omens out there, because there's always someone who's ready to basically poop in your swimming pool. So why do that, And yesterday, the same thing happened. So I was like, oh, these little ladybugs. And then, there were three, mostly people gave me some good thoughts about ladybugs. Then there was a few people who were like, yeah, they might be, deranged, these deranged things that look like, ladybugs, but aren't. And it could mean that, ruin is going to fall upon you, or something like that. And I was just like, okay, the good lesson in that is that you have to be careful of boundaries. Your inspiration can flow outward very easily right now. You can feel very kind of heart opened to share the deeper meaning of your life, or the deeper, perceptions that you're having, or something like that. And you have to be careful, because Neptune and the sun can be about just sort of the open heart, but it might be too porous. And then you have to be careful, because people, not everyone, don't cast your pearl before swine. You've heard that before, I'm sure. Well, not everyone is necessarily equipped to recognize, or even, basically recognize when we're being vulnerable, and be good stewards of our vulnerability. It's Neptune and the sun, on the other hand, can be just that. It's a great time right now to really open the ears and eyes of the heart, so that when people are speaking, when people are talking, you really feel and listen deeply, and be more interested in the listening, without the immediate responses being generated in the head, and just deeply listening and taking things in. We may actually have something of great value to receive from others right now that can really touch our hearts. So there is a kind of open-heartedness that's part of Sun Neptune. At the same time, you do have to be careful about sharing your truth, or your visions or your questions or your open-hearted inquiries with others, because sometimes you're going to be a little bit, it's a little too porous sometimes. So anyway, me and my ladybugs are fine. Thank you. Anyway, now let's see. So you can also look at the, you can sometimes notice that teachers, gurus, saints will enter your life around this time. It's not uncommon, especially if you're going through a bigger Neptune transit in your birth chart, say to the 9th house or the ruler of the 9th house or something like that, to meet people who are saintly. Now, saintly, what does that mean? Well, it's relative, but saintly people, we could say universally, are people who have practiced what they've preached, a message of compassion, love, forgiveness, mercy, patience, mindfulness, and they practice it for a long time, and they actually embody some of those qualities. And when you're with them, whether they're teaching you, how to, build a house, or how to do some menial work, or if they're teaching you the highest spiritual truths in the universe, you just pick up something from them and you go, this person's kind of effulgent. There's something from them that I can feel that I'm receiving some essence of their heart and soul, which is evolved. It's grown. It's like a plant that's blossomed. So that sense of being around saintly people, or people who give off an effulgence or a halo or light, or some sense of some full-heartedness that inspires us. You have to be careful at the same time, because that whole phony guru thing can be there too, where there's people who proclaim all sorts of spiritual truths, on the internet, and whatever. As a yoga studio owner for a long time, we were always really careful about making sure that the people we had in were humble, modest, and people who had backgrounds in traditional lineages of yoga philosophy and yoga teachings. People just can come around and make all sorts of stuff up. So be careful of, the people who are making proclamations about the deeper meaning of something, but they haven't studied, or they don't practice what they preach, or so some degree of phoniness that we can be deluded by, or even sort of intoxicated by. So you think of also like cults and things like that, where you're kind of expected to drink the Kool-Aid, and it's something that doesn't have a moral kind of integrity to it, or it doesn't have a sense of long-standing truth or history behind it, something to give it a little bit more groundedness, whatever that might be. So be careful of that. Also, of course, the dissolution of self, the Sun Neptune, we already talked about losing ourselves. Sometimes the ego can there can be some ego dissolution that could be very healthy and very healing, being humbled, realizing how vast everything is and how small we are. Those are great experiences to have if we're having them in an uplifting and supportive, nurturing way. I mean, they can be good if we're having them in difficult ways too, but Neptune Sun can be about looking up at the stars and just being like, this is so vast. And sometimes, for example, with Neptune and the Sun, the best prayer that you could ever pray is to say, universe, God, however you address the divine, if you say, dear universe, I don't know what I need. I don't know what I want, because so often the things that I've thought that I've wanted, so often the things that I've pursued have not led me where I thought they would, or have not made me happy in the ways that I thought that I would. Please lead me. Please guide me. Please give me what's best for me. Even if it's difficult, I surrender. I don't know what's best for me, and I'd love your loving guidance. And when we make ourselves submissive like that, it's not like we're losing our agency or our will or our ability to think for ourselves. It's that we're taking a disposition in the heart that's humbler, and therefore we might, it's like knock and the door will be opened. If we humbly inquire as to what's best for us, the knowledge comes into our heart, and then we make the choices, and we're illuminated from within. Just like parents, the universe in some ways is, I get a lot of insight about this being a parent and learning how to parent. The universe in many ways and divinity is always sort of giving us, facility to make the right choices, illuminating us from within. Just like a parent has to help a child make the right choices on their own. You don't want to make the choices for them, but you want to help give them the information that they need to make healthy choices. So similarly, one of the greatest prayers for the Sun Neptune that we could pray is, give me the divine intelligence to guide my actions in the right way. Fill me, illuminate me with knowledge, truth, beauty, and goodness so that I can make the right choices in my life. I don't know what they are, but if we put ourselves in that humble position, we still get to be intelligent beings that make our own choices, but we're asking for help. We're asking for guidance, and we need that. So that's a good thing to do with Neptune Sun. Of course, the opposite extreme would be to completely surrender ourselves into the authority of someone that doesn't have our best interest in mind, again, like a phony teacher or something like that. And usually Sun Neptune, one of the ways you can tell is simply, again, by looking at, has something been time tested? Is it grounded? Does there feel like there's some kind of selfish interest behind this? We're all selfish in some ways, so we don't have to be, puritanical about this, but using some discernment is important right now. Sometimes we can think that something little is hugely important. For example, if you've ever had a psychedelic experience, you can get caught up in staring at the fabric on your couch and being like, oh my God, it's Fibonacci sequence. You know what I mean? Like some crazy, and it's real when you're in that, when you're in that space, it's like, oh, that's a real experience. You're seeing you're anything in reality, the smallest, as Jesus taught, the mustard seed is like the kingdom of heaven. Tiny little things can take on vast, huge importance, or can become inflated. For example, if you've ever dated someone, that's been sort of like romantic but paranoid. So for example, you're like, you don't call them or text them for 30 minutes longer than you normally do or something, and they're like, no, it's over. I see what's going on. No, I understood. Well, during those 30 minutes, I had time to think, and I went into my heart and I realized, you're not really tuned in, or you're not really, so I can't give more than I can give. And so goodbye. And you're just like, wait, what? 30 minutes? Like, no, I just was like, I had to, whatever. I was going to the bathroom or whatever the case might be. You're like, what is going on? And then you realize, okay, wait, this person I've been with who is romantic and interesting, and I've been in this kind of romance, they're crazy and I need to get out. Like, and so then you're like, okay. So it's to be careful, because that sort of psychotic, intoxicated, the littlest thing is the biggest thing, can happen to any of us at any time. I don't mean to be a jerk, but you have to be careful of that sense of projecting something tiny to be infinitely bigger or more important than it is. But also note that you can find heaven in a grain of sand, in the mustard seed. So the little can be big. Sometimes the little is made into something too big. We could be careful of like mystical, stylized sexuality with Neptune and the Sun, especially with Venus and Uranus in the same token, happening at the same time. There's the potential for, what I would call like erotic, imaginative glamour, which can be artistic and interesting and fun. And certainly we shouldn't buy into a paradigm of shame, of being ashamed. But at the same time, we have to be very careful, because all of the great, whether it's Buddhism or yoga, the contemplative and mystical side of Christianity, all the Sufis, everything, the material energy it's very seductive. So we can fall into it and get lost very quickly. For example, you're like, you know what, I've been on a diet and I haven't really been eating sugar because maybe I have a problem that I tend to binge on sugar, but you know what, I'll just have this one little thing, this one little morsel. And then before you know it, you're neck deep in ho-hos again, or whatever the case might be. So you really have to be careful of the seduction, something that you think is harmless, that we're glamorizing something that we just have to be careful with the material energy. Just like the mind can be the best of friends or the worst of enemies. So similarly, how we satiate our desires And when we say, no, like for example, classic thing that happens to people during their yoga teacher training experiences is they feel really, really high after a yoga teacher training, right? And so they feel so good that they think, oh, like I'm feeling so good, maybe I don't need to practice every day. Or maybe, so they whenever we're feeling good, we're tempted to get a little high on ourselves. And when we get a little high on ourselves, then we tend to indulge in things that take us in that little downward spiral out of our center again. And then we're like, oh, I'm not feeling very good, and I'm not very happy, and like I got to get back to my center. The truth is that we're self-effulgent beings. Our Sat Chit Ananda, right? We are eternally, blissful, knowledgeable. So the happiness, the ultimate happiness, the ultimate beauty, all of those qualities are within us. And so we have to be careful with Neptune and the sun that we don't sort of like, look at me, I'm so sexy and mystical. You know what I mean? That's one thing that people like to do. I mentioned this yesterday with Venus Uranus also, just trying to glamorize and intoxicate other people with something that we feel like is really great about ourselves. And you can watch for that sense of stylized mystique that might not be very substantive. So, I mean, last time I checked, zero of the great saints of the world that I've ever studied, from men and women from all over the world, shamans in South America to, saints all across the world, again, just aren't like taking selfies of themselves half nude, being like, come to my workshop. So just something to look at. For all of us, because it's easy. And that's how advertising works these days too. But it's another thing that's amplified by the sun and Neptune. Now, again, we can get that sense of the invisible meaning or order behind things. That's a Sun-Neptune dynamic. Sun represents higher truth and clarity. Just like when the sun comes up, darkness is gone. Darkness as a metaphor for ignorance or not knowing something. The sun rises, light appears. Light is connected with vision. When we know something, we say, now I see. So vision and understanding and truth and clarity about something that can be almost, it can be subtle, invisible, metaphysical, philosophical, just picking up on things that are very subtle like that. And that can be really nice. However, we do have to be careful about clarity versus illusion. And there's actually a lot of misunderstanding about illusion in modern sort of new age spirituality in general. For example, let's say you go into your basement one day and the light is off in the basement and there is a hose coiled up on the floor in the dark. But because it's dark and you look at it dimly, you think, oh my God, there's a snake. And right, you've probably heard this example before. And so you have a real reaction. Your heart starts racing. You start spinning out. Maybe you back up really quickly, smack your head on the wall or something, right? You could imagine something like this could happen. Turn on the light and you go, oh, it's just a snake. So is it that, that there was, obviously it wasn't a snake. So there's a certain degree to which there's an illusion present. But the illusion has a real effect. And so there is a certain ontological sense in which illusions have a reality. Similarly, we say the material world is in some ways an illusion. All ancient mystics that practice astrology said, if you think about it, like if you hold up like a three-dimensional object, like a ball or something like that, like a slinky or something, and you hold it out in the sunlight over the grass, the light casts at an angle and there's a shadow on the grass. The shadow is a real thing. It has its own real presence, but it's not the actual slinky or the actual object you're holding up. So thinking about what kind of reality do shadows have and how do they work on us, that's a big part of Neptune and the sun. Sometimes when we see and understand something for what it is, and we're able to understand how we've been reacting based on a false perception of what we thought it was, we learn, we become educated. So similarly in spiritual life, Plato said, the prisoners start off in the cave, seeing the shadows on the wall, and they think that's all that's real. They come out of by somehow or another, the prisoner gets free and he takes a spiritual journey, so to speak, and goes out of the cave and sees the real world. So similarly, this transit has a lot to do with the difference between the illusions and the kind of power they have over us. There's a real illusion and a real power that the illusion has. And then there's the sort of real world that is in some ways right before us, but we can't see it because we're fixated on the shadow. So that those kinds of metaphysical dynamics between illusion, truth, light, and shadow, those are really pronounced with the Sun and Neptune together. We can also mistake addiction to different kinds of substances for having some kind of insight. I can't tell you, unfortunately, how many astrology conferences I've been to where the main form of socialization outside of people taking classes is drinking. And I don't mean to criticize anyone, but same thing with yoga. You wouldn't believe how many yoga retreats I've been on or led, and people want to drink and get intoxicated. It's very easy, as you know, when you're intoxicated to think that you're advancing in a way that you aren't. So for example, this classic example being like this. Well, for example, I can't remember which Native American group it is that has a name for marijuana that calls marijuana the liar, because the story about this goes that marijuana will make you think that you're doing things when you're not doing anything, or make you think that you're really advancing in some way when you're just kind of sitting on the couch. So similarly, if you've ever been inebriated and you've been on a date with someone and you think, oh my God, I've fallen in love, I have so much in common with this person, whatever. Well, then in the light of the sober light of day, you go, what did I just do? You know what I mean? So you have to be careful, and I'm not trying to condemn, anyone's lifestyle practices or anything like that. Certainly, it's my own personal belief that if one wants to advance in astrology or in any spiritual practice, that at some point a higher degree of sobriety is needed. That's just a firm belief that I have. But regardless of whether we agree or disagree on that or not, you have to be careful about any kind of intoxicating environment or habit or substance or anything that could make you think that you're advancing in some way that you aren't, or that could deliver some grandiose vision or plan or mission or message, that's not grounded. Whatever, let me see. Yeah, whatever issues you might have with your father or men or leaders, the sun can be sort of a patriarchal symbol or a symbol of fathers or the leaders or core concepts that hold everything together. So something that's at the center or the head, sun issues, or something like a father, those you can see dissolution coming around those things, the healing related to those things. And then in general, you think of themes like saviors, saints, sinners, purification, baptism, and also this idea of the kingdom of God being here, but somewhat invisible and needing to differentiate between light and shadows again. And of course, Neptune and the sun can fill us with compassion. Maybe one of the nicest benefits of Neptune and the sun is this feeling of being more broad-minded, more broad-hearted, more willing to forgive. And again, remember, maybe the simplest prayer we could pray right now is asking for ears and eyes of love and listening to really deeply take in what other people are by their very nature and what they're saying and what's on their heart. It's not so much that we receive by the good things or positive coins that someone puts into our basket of insight or knowledge or something like that. It's that if we take the time to recognize that there is a child of God sitting right in front of me, and whoever they are, whatever is going on with them, that it is a reflection of divinity, whatever they're saying, whatever they're going through. When we pause and decide to listen to someone like that, which is what it means to open the eyes and ears of the heart, then whatever they are is added unto us when we listen like that. And if you've ever been around really saintly people, that's their disposition. I've had the benefit of being around what I consider to be some really saintly people in my life. And, they listen very, very deeply. And they are filled constantly by listening, because rather than thinking, oh, how do I respond? And, like this is a transactional thing. It's like seeing someone as a wellspring of God's love. And when you experience everything like that, regardless of what people are doing, it's because we've chosen to listen and open ourselves to that level of who people are and what everything is around us. So that's one prayer that we can do, is just like, hey, universe, open my ears, open my eyes so that I can really see divinity in everything and really receive that right now, because it's radiating through everything. A little bit more open to that with Sun Neptune, you could say. On the other hand, the other prayer that we talked about today in this talk was to say, I don't always know where I'm going or what the best thing is to do. I want to use my mind, my agency, and my intelligence to the best of my ability, but please fill me from within, illuminate me from within, and show me the way. I don't always know what's in my best self-interest. So that kind of humble prayer can fill us with a quiet, persevering, knowledge that can really lead us in the right direction. So those are a few final thoughts for today. I hope that you enjoy this Sun Neptune transit. Tell me your stories in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you and hear how it's going. We'll be back for a little bit more on the full moon. Also, if you have this in your natal chart, I'd love to hear from you if you have a Sun Neptune contact. And we'll be back for more on the full moon in Virgo shortly. All right, take it easy, everyone.